Welcome to Revolution Report, the show that highlights pressing issues, uplifts community voices, and questions the status quo. I'm Sarah Livings-Walsh.
And I'm Analisa, Venolia.
We felt the need to dive deeper into societal problems and explore subjects from diverse perspectives. So join us in the revolution.
Lift to the tail. Lift to the tail. Lift to the tail.
This episode, we wanted to take some time to talk about everything that's been going on in LA recently and why it matters, not just for our city, but for the entire country.
We're going to start off talking about ICE, then move on to LA and the protests here, and then discuss how people can protest safely.
We originally were going to talk about the discrimination and the hatred the trans community is currently facing because it's Pride Month. But this topic is pressing, and we wanted to dispel some myths and have honest conversations about what's happening in our city.
And the things we're talking about also affect the trans community. There are trans immigrants, there are trans people protesting fascism, trans people live in LA and call the city home. Trans people, we see you, we love you, and we recognize the intersections of identity within your community.
And we will still release that episode. In fact, it's coming out next.
For now, let's dive into today's topic. To kick us off with a bang, Sarah, what is a Gustapo?
I'm so glad you asked, Anna. I've been dying to tell you. According to the Holocaust Encyclopedia, the Gestapo was Nazi Germany's infamous political police force. Over the course of the Nazi era, the institution of the Gestapo expanded and changed. The groups targeted by the Gestapo shifted with the regime's policies and priorities. One thing remained consistent. The Gestapo was a reliably brutal tool that enforced Nazism's most radical impulses. Nowadays, the term has come to mean any police force that is being used for political reasons.
ICE has been arresting and trying to deport people who are in the United States legally with legitimate visas and green cards. These people are being arrested for daring to call for a free Palestine or resisting the ideas that the Trump administration holds. The administration claims that these people have committed crimes, when in fact they have not. Let us be clear, these are political arrests, and ICE is being used for political reasons. Given that information, ICE is a Gustapo. Now let's think. Political opposition getting arrested. Does that sound like fascism to anyone else?
I know it does to me, and the 11 million people plus who protested as a part of the No Kings movement on Saturday. They clearly agree.
Absolutely.
Now, we're also entering a new era of living in a surveillance state. There's a company called Palantir, founded by the deeply evil Peter Thiel in 2003, that now has surveillance technology that the U.S. government is planning to use on its people. The company was backed by the CIA, if that tells you anything. In fact, ICE has $30 million contracts with the company to develop a software that they want to call, quote, Immigration OS, to track people as they, quote, self-deport. If you think tech like this wouldn't be used on the American people, I truly want you to think again. We already have federal officers conducting political arrests and using violent force on citizens. What makes you think that they wouldn't want to use the latest surveillance tech on dissidents?
We need to wake up to the fact that we are living in a burgeoning fascist state. If we don't stand up and fight this, we'll end up with blatant citizen surveillance. And we've already lost so many privacy rights thanks to the Patriot Act, which the government justified post 9/11 as a way to, we're going to fight terrorism. No, what it was an attack on the constitutional right to privacy of Americans. But it's also not like this surveillance is new. The government has been tracking opposition for literal ages. For example, my grandparents were put on government lists because of their work with the United Farm Workers. They weren't violent. They weren't plotting against the country. They were just fighting for farm workers' rights, their right to fair wages, their right to not be abused by their employers. Nothing crazy, just basic human rights and human dignity for people. And yet that was enough for them to be targeted by the government.
So something to think about for everyone at home who is listening.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about what's happening in LA in response to the recent ICE raids. There has been a lot of misrepresentation, and it's seeming like the city's in flames and there's chaos everywhere.
Let us be clear, that is not what is happening. LA is not in shambles. There's no mass looting. There's no violence in the streets, except for what's being caused by the police and the National Guard.
Correct. So let's go over the facts. Here's what happened on Friday, June 7th through June 8th. Trump ordered California's National Guard to be deployed to Los Angeles. Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass both publicly stated they did not request the National Guard assistance. Under normal circumstances, National Guard deployment requires state approval unless the Insurrection Act is invoked, which Trump still has not done. Trump placed the National Guard under federal control, bypassing state authority, a rare and provocative move that violates the 10th Amendment unless the Insurrection Act is formally invoked. On June 8th, LAPD and local sheriffs reported protests were largely peaceful, especially during the day before Trump's escalation. Some tensions flared in Paramount and downtown LA and Compton, but no reports of organized looting or widespread property destruction emerged. The Department of Homeland Security claimed about 1,000 rioters were involved. Reuters explicitly stated that number could not be independently verified. No arrests, property damage, or injuries matched the scale of the claim in the public records or independent media.
Interesting. I think it's clear that the Trump administration was trying to spin a narrative to justify their forceful presence here in Los Angeles, to try and persuade the rest of the country that what was happening was justified, what was necessary. Like Kristi Noem especially going on saying that they're going to cleanse Los Angeles.
Oh, don't forget her calling all of LA criminals.
Yes. Noted criminals, Sarah Livings-Walsh and Analisa Venolia.
Oh, yeah, this isn't alleged. She literally shot her dog.
She did. She's an evil person, and it is deeply hypocritical, deeply absurd for her to say that everyone in LA is a criminal. Ma'am, the vast majority of people in Los Angeles will never be as evil as you.
Yes, and something that I want all of our listeners to keep in mind is a lot of what we are seeing from the Trump administration, a lot of their projections are just confessions. So please take that into consideration when you are taking in the news, taking in their Sorry, I got a little heated. When you are taking in their nonsensical information. Just please keep that in mind.
No, agreed. I think that, as Sarah's saying, and we know this to be true, often when they accuse someone else of something, they're doing it themselves. So just be aware. Also, may I remind our listeners, not that they need it because I'm sure you all know, we have a literal felon in the White House. So the accusation that all of Los Angeles are criminals, accusations are confessions, just like Sarah said. A literal felon is in the White House. Agreed. Now back to you, Sarah.
Reporters on the ground, including from LAist, KPCC, and Reuters, reported being tear-gassed or pushed back despite clearly identifying themselves. Multiple journalists were caught on camera saying, "We're press," as flashbangs or tear gas were deployed nearby or at them. An NBCLA reporter with a press vest got shot with a rubber bullet. And might I add, they're not the only one.
Which is absolutely horrifying. Attacks on the free press are major glaring indicators of authoritarianism and fascism. Free press is foundational to a democratic state because the citizens need to have accurate information to receive that is not propaganda, that is not state-sponsored, that is not state-fed. And attacking the people whose job that is a direct attack on democracy. Also, an Australian reporter was directly hit by an LAPD officer. They literally, you can see the video footage, took aim at her specifically.
Now, if we were to look back in history, there have been things lesser than that have started wars.
I am astounded by what this administration does, what they allow their Gustapo to do so blatantly. And I'm so proud of the people of Los Angeles for pushing back.
Oh, yes.
We just need more politicians to join the fight. Like, shouts to Senator Alex Padilla, who was arrested for daring to ask Kristi Noem a question.
Yeah.
But, oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, I'm so tired of politicians using citizens as political chess pieces to move their political agenda.
Absolutely agreed. We are not, the citizens of your city, state, country are not pawns in your political theater.
No, and I think as a country, we are waking up to that fact.
Yes.
That unfortunately, that is how they have viewed us
Yeah.
this entire time. A lot of the time, what they love to do, and this is on both sides, they love to point the finger with things that actively they can stop and control and get ahead of, and they won't do it because that ruins their campaign for next year's election or the 4-year election. We need to require more from our senators, from our congressmen.
From our governors, integrity, please.
Like this man, the Trump administration and Trump himself literally turned the military against the people. We, the people, need to call our representatives and demand action for this.
110%. It is unacceptable what has been happening not only here in Los Angeles, but just across the country, this blatant abuse of power. And if we let it go unchecked, we'll only slide further and further down into the pit of fascism.
Yes.
Now, bringing it back to what's been going on here in Los Angeles.
Yes. Video footage and timeline analysis show a flashbang grenade thrown into debris shortly before a car caught on fire, which if you are watching the news right now, that is the car that has been circulating press as we speak to push forward an agenda that there are rioters, that there are looters, that there are all of that. We literally saw the footage. Hamble Court Radio literally saw the footage of that explosion to that car happening by the LAPD.
Yeah. We also saw video footage of like 20 cops standing around a cop car and the cops themselves destroying that car. There was not a protester within dozens and dozens of feet of all those cops just damaging their own car. There are people filming the cops doing that as if these cops are somehow unaware that they're being filmed or they just don't care. And they're just so happy to manufacture narratives despite knowing that people are recording them doing this. Just, it's offensive to the American people. Do you think that we're not going to see this video footage of you damaging your own property to craft a narrative that LA has rioters and looters and people causing violence? Look at this destruction to property, which I would like to be clear, destruction to property is very different than destruction of human bodies and destruction of human life. And
speak on it.
They are not equivalent. They will never be equivalent. So the violence enacted by the police and the National Guard to the protesters is absurd and in no way could ever damaging a car be equivalent to that. But regardless, they're trying to craft a narrative to justify their violent force on the people of Los Angeles, that everything is crazy here in LA. No, we literally have video footage of the LAPD doing this to themselves.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so disheartening because at the same time that the Gustapo is doing this, we are seeing a silver lining in the chaos and in the destruction and in the terror, which is so unimaginable to say, but we are seeing communities come together.
Absolutely.
And we are seeing communities saying, enough.
Yeah.
And we will not take it.
We will not take it. And we will touch on that and go into more detail even later. But just know, it's happening.
Yeah. Video footage reviewed by The Guardian and Washington Post showed flashbangs, tear gas, and rubber bullets deployed against protesters without clear provocation. Protesters were often seen dispersing and shielding themselves, not advancing aggressively.
Yeah, it's just the state wanting to do the state, and by like state, I don't mean the literal state of California. I just mean the government wanting to enact violence on citizens for no reason other than they want to.
It's politically motivated.
Absolutely.
And to think otherwise, I think, is foolish.
I agree. Now, moving on to what's been happening a little more recently. On Friday, June 13th, 200 Marines arrived in Los Angeles under the order of Donald Trump to guard a federal building. They are currently supposed to be joined by 500 other Marines at a later date. So just let's be clear, that is 700 Marine troops on California soil deployed against the American people. The National Guard is typically forbidden from taking part in civil law enforcement, and so is the U.S. military as a whole, including the Marines. This is thanks to the Posse Comitatus Act. And as we've stated before, Trump's deployment of the National Guard, but now also the Marines, is only legal under the Insurrection Act, which Trump has not invoked. As of the time of this recording, the legality of Trump's actions deploying the National Guard and the Marines against California and Los Angeles is currently being litigated. California sued Trump, and the lower courts ruled that Trump's actions were illegal. However, Trump appealed the decision, and now the case is being heard by the Federal Appeals Court.
Which is just, I would like to point out, just an abuse of the federal judicial system.
Absolutely. It is a stalling tactic. It is
deplorable. And also, what can we expect? A criminal doing criminal things? Like, we didn't see this one coming. Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. We absolutely did.
When on earth did we think that he was going to wake up one day and go, oh, yes, I'm going to follow the law? Like, no, he's not.
He has never cared, and he will never care.
34 convictions and felonies?
And that's our president.
You think he's going to follow the law?
Yeah.
No.
Truly. And what's really upsetting is that regardless of the outcome of the case, California, and Los Angeles more specifically, has already experienced multiple instances of state-sanctioned violence, both at the hands of the National Guard and the police. Trigger warning for descriptions of state violence, police violence. If you don't want to hear that, just turn us off for maybe a minute or two, and we'll be back with talking about how we can resist this. But getting into it. Someone was trampled by a horse, which was violence intentionally caused by a mounted officer. How do we know this? We have video footage of the officer directing their horse to trample this person. There have been multiple reporters and civilians shot by rubber bullets, as we touched on before. But recently, on Saturday, June 14th, a protester is in the hospital because they were shot in the eye with a rubber bullet from 3 feet away by an officer.
Absolutely deplorable. I'm so frustrated. I can't even speak. I if this is happening to you or this happened to you at the No Kings protest, we are going to put some numbers to some pro bono lawyers that you can call.
And also, for those listening who are upset, we will also, towards the end of the show, give a number where you can file civilian complaints to the LAPD to try and just do something. More on that later. But going back into it, infuriatingly, a young woman was trying to get home in a curfewed zone in Los Angeles, which is allowed. The curfew has now been lifted, but at the time there was a curfew, and she was trying to get home, which she was allowed to do legally. And the officers would not let her get home. So they shot her multiple times in the back as she was like leaving the situation. They had no right to shoot her. Rubber bullets, let's be clear. And just because they're rubber bullets doesn't mean they're non-lethal. We have seen throughout history multiple examples of people dying because of injury due to a rubber bullet. Non-lethal is a lie. You know, you could argue that a Stanley Cup is non-lethal. If you hit someone enough times with it, they're going to die.
Especially in the back of the head.
We're not advocating violence. And just to add to the already heinous list of crimes by the LAPD and the National Guard, on Saturday, June 14th, after abruptly declaring the peaceful No Kings protest downtown unlawful, an abrupt declaration, police officers knocked protesters down. They charged into crowds. They shot protesters with rubber bullets and beat them with long sticks. They fired rubber bullets into a crowd of journalists at close range, hitting multiple of them, and they shoved elderly people to the ground. What kind of a person do you have to be to target an elderly person? The kind of person you have to be to do this violence is someone who enjoys violence, someone who has no regard for the sanctity of democracy, someone who is pro-authoritarianism, pro-fascism, and quite honestly, pro-white supremacy. And as such, you should have no place in government, no place part of any state institution. And yet here we are. Here we are. And one important thing to note while all of this chaos caused by the police was happening on Saturday, protesters were chanting peaceful protest. The police officers were being violent and the protesters were chanting peaceful protest. Just the stark difference, you know, the people who are being victimized, who are being attacked are saying, hey, we're being peaceful, and the officers just going and being violent anyway. Absolutely inhumane. You know, protesters before this happened were laying flowers at the feet of police officers, at the feet of National Guards, asking them to be peaceful. The people want peace, and yet the state chooses violence. To wrap things up, we just wanted to state that no individual act of violence that any protester could do, not that there has been many aside from property damage, could ever be equal to the huge violence that the government is committing with its inhumane policies and violence against its own people.
Absolutely. Now, why does what's going on in LA matter for the country? LA is being used to test what the government can get away with. As MLK said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Facts.
Despite this tyranny, there is also hope. LA is showing that we can fight back and stand up to fascism. We don't have to roll over and take it. Which leads us to protesting itself. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely. You know, my family and I all attended the No Kings protest in Studio City. And what we saw there was really inspiring. We saw people from all walks of life, different backgrounds, a wide range of ages. I saw a woman in her 80s holding a sign saying, I'm in my 80s and I'm out here protesting Donald Trump. I saw families with children. I saw people with pets. I saw people in wheelchairs. The community really turned out to say, We stand against this. There were signs against fascism. There were signs against ICE. It was a wonderful display of community. And I think it's a really hopeful image for the rest of the country. You know, we are united against this fascism. Now let's discuss how to stay safe at protests.
Dress in neutrals. Cover your arms and legs for protection from the sun, and cover your tattoos.
You should also wear a mask or a bandana. While Trump says you shouldn't do this, keep yourself safe. You know, not only is COVID on the rise or other diseases on the rise, we're not free of a pandemic, so you're going to be keeping yourself safe that way. You're also protecting your identity, and should tear gas be used, at least you have a barrier between you and the tear gas.
Bring eye protection, just in case.
Things like goggles, Rave goggles can even work. Things that will protect your eyes from the tear gas. Now, I'm not saying you need to wear that all the time, but when the occasion arises, put it on. Safety first.
Bring water, both to drink and for your eyes if tear gassed. And please, everyone, do not use milk.
We don't want you to get an infection. It's possible that it can happen, and it's better to just not risk it. Water is safer, water or a saline solution. Just keep your health in mind.
Wear closed-toed, comfortable shoes.
You're going to be standing a lot. Maybe you're going to be marching. Your feet will get tired, and you don't want your toes to be stepped on. You also want things, just in case things go wrong, that you can run in. So maybe steer clear of platforms, things like that, because you want to be able to get away safely.
And turn off facial recognition and fingerprint verification on your phone. Turn off location services and use airplane mode.
Absolutely. And for safety, you should make sure that you're going with a buddy, a group of people, or if you don't have that, make sure you have a contact who isn't at the protest that you can check in with from time to time so that somebody always knows where you are. Do not go to a protest without letting somebody know where you are going to be.
We do the buddy system.
Absolutely. We have a code. If something goes wrong,
We're not
Sarah
saying
knows.
the code.
That's our secret. But safety first. You know, we are being responsible and preparing.
Write numbers for legal assistance on your arm in permanent marker. The number for the National Lawyers Guild in Los Angeles is 310-313-3700. That is 310-313-3700. The National Lawyers Guild has many lawyers who will help protesters across the country.
So if you're not in LA, you can look up your local number. And one last thing to keep in mind. It's smart to bring snacks and supplies, maybe even an umbrella, just in case there's tear gas, in a backpack. However, if you can, make sure that backpack is clear, because we have seen in these recent protests, cops grabbing protesters by their backpacks and claiming that they didn't know what was inside of the backpack and trying to search them and detain them because they don't know what's in there. If you have a clear backpack on, that may not stop you from getting, detained by police, but at least they don't have that as an excuse because they can quite literally see what you have going on there. So at least it gives you more protection in like a legal sense, and it takes away some of their arguments for their abuse of power.
Excellent point, Anna. Organizations to donate to, we really wanted to have that be a feature in this episode. So please donate to organizations like Jail Support LA.
They're doing incredible work helping connect people who have been arrested at these protests with legal support, with money to pay for bail, things like that. A valuable organization, completely grassroots, community-based. We will link on our website to their Instagram. On their Linktree, they have links to their Venmo, things like that. If you need support, you can also reach out to them.
Yes, and Polo's Pantry. They are delivering food to families who have had a breadwinner kidnapped by ICE.
Another incredible organization. They actually have a paid staff as well. So not only will your donations go towards feeding families who need that food, who have lost that structure and support because of the actions of this absolutely tyrannical government. But you'll also be supporting the employees of Polo's Pantry because this kind of work is hard and people deserve to be compensated for it.
If you're in LA and want to call the LAPD to file complaints about an officer's actions, call 800-339-6868. That is 800-339-6868. And then press 2. The LAPD claims they can't investigate without complaints being filed. Who knows if these complaints will actually go anywhere, because police unions usually care more about protecting officers' paychecks than community safety. But it's worth a shot.
It absolutely is. Anything we can do to push back against the fascism that we're seeing in this country. That was definitely an intense episode, but it was important, and we hope you feel encouraged to fight back against fascism.
As always, the resources we discussed will be linked on our website, handballcourtradio.com. You can also follow us on Blue Sky at Handball Court Radio, and you can also follow me there at Sarah Livings-Walsh.
I'm there as Not Like Mona Lisa. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss our content. And don't forget to rate, review, and follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
And with that, I'm Sarah Livings-Walsh.
I'm Analisa Venolia.
And this has been Revolution Report.